The grand lobby of the Regent Hotel sparkled under crystal chandeliers. Early evening sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching on polished marble floors and gilded picture frames. At the front desk, Raj adjusted his navy blue tie for the 5th time that hour. 3 months on the job, and he still wasn't used to the stiff collar of his uniform. "You look fine," whispered May, his supervisor, as she passed behind him with a stack of registration cards. "Stop fidgeting." Raj nodded and straightened his shoulders. The Regent was the fanciest place he'd ever worked. Everything about it intimidated him. The wealthy guests, the famous visitors, the unspoken rules about how staff should behave. But the pay was good, better than anything else he could find with his limited experience. And he needed every penny. His grandmother's medical bills weren't going to pay themselves. The thought of her sitting alone in their small apartment made his chest ache. She'd raised him after his parents died, worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, never complained even when her hands cramped from long hours cleaning hotel rooms, not unlike the ones upstairs. Now her heart was failing and the specialized treatment she needed wasn't covered by their basic insurance. "Incoming," May muttered, nodding toward the revolving doors. Raj looked up to see a flurry of activity at the entrance. Bellhops rushed forward as a line of sleek black cars pulled up outside. The charity gala. He'd almost forgotten. For weeks, the hotel staff had buzzed about tonight's event. The city's wealthiest and most influential people would gather in the ballroom to raise money for children's education. Or at least, that was the official purpose. Everyone knew these events were more about networking and being seen than actual charity. The first wave of guests swept through the doors like exotic birds, dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than Raj earned in 6 months. He smiled politely as they passed, most not bothering to glance his way. Ms. Montgomery's car just pulled up. The doorman's voice crackled through May's earpiece. She immediately stood straighter. "Be ready," she told Raj quietly. "Whatever she wants, just say yes." "Who's Ms. Montgomery?" Raj asked, but his question was answered before May could respond. The revolving door spun, and the lobby seemed to hold its breath. A woman entered, surrounded by 4 people who moved like satellites around her. She was shorter than Raj had expected, maybe in her mid-30s, with sharp features and dark hair cut in an expensive bob. Her red dress was simple but clearly cost more than a car, and diamonds glinted at her throat and wrists. "Lillian Montgomery," May whispered. "Tech millionaire. Founded that app everyone uses for language translation. Notorious for firing people on the spot if they annoy her." Raj swallowed hard as the entourage approached the desk. Up close, he could see how everyone around Ms. Montgomery watched her face constantly, adjusting their expressions to match hers, laughing when she made a dry comment, frowning when she pointed out something displeasing in the lobby. "Reservation for Montgomery," she said without preamble, not bothering to look directly at Raj as she handed over a sleek black credit card. "Of course. Ms. Montgomery, we have your usual suite prepared." Raj's fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, pulling up her information. "You're staying with us for 3 nights, is that correct?" She gave a small nod, her attention already elsewhere, scanning the lobby with quick, assessing glances. Raj worked silently, aware of the weight of her companion's stares. He processed her check-in as quickly as possible, sliding key cards across the polished desk. That should have been the end of it. She should have taken the keys and swept off to the elevators with her entourage, leaving Raj to breathe again. But as she reached for the cards, her eyes caught on his hands. Raj froze, suddenly self-conscious. His hands were his grandmother's hands. Long fingers, wide palms, with calluses on the fingertips that never seemed to fade no matter how long it had been since he'd played. "You play," she said. It wasn't a question. Heat crept up Raj's neck. "I'm sorry." "Piano." She nodded toward his hands. "Those are pianist's fingers. My father was a concert pianist. I'd know those hands anywhere." One of her companions, a man with carefully styled hair, leaned in. "Lil, we're already late for the pre-gala cocktails." She silenced him with a small gesture, her eyes never leaving Raj's face. Something flickered in her expression. Curiosity? Mischief? Challenge? "That piano," she said, pointing to the gleaming grand piano that sat unused in the corner of the lobby. "Does it actually work, or is it just for show?" "It works," Raj said, feeling increasingly uncomfortable as the group's attention focused on him. "We sometimes have musicians play during holiday weekends. A small, dangerous smile curved her lips, the kind of smile that warned of trouble ahead. "Play that piano," she said, her voice carrying just loudly enough to make nearby heads turn. "And I'll go out with you." Time seemed to stop. Raj stared at her, certain he'd misheard. Her companions exchanged glances, confused smiles playing on their lips. One woman with platinum blonde hair coughed delicately into her hand, clearly hiding a laugh. "I'm sorry," Raj managed. "You heard me." Lillian Montgomery's eyes glittered with amusement. "Play that piano and I'll go out with you. Dinner, wherever you want." She shrugged one elegant shoulder. "I'm bored." "Surprise me," the man beside her frowned. "Lil, seriously? I'm dead serious." She crossed her arms, the diamonds at her wrist catching the light. "Unless, of course, he can't actually play, in which case—" She let the implication hang in the air. Raj became acutely aware that a small crowd had gathered. Hotel guests paused on their way to the elevators. Staff members froze in place, wide-eyed. May stood behind him, her expression a silent scream of panic. His first instinct was to politely decline, to explain that he was on duty and couldn't possibly step away from the desk. But something in Lillian Montgomery's expression, the absolute certainty that he wouldn't dare accept her challenge, sparked a long-dormant feeling in his chest. 8 years of lessons. 3 state championships. The scholarship to the music conservatory he'd had to turn down when his grandmother got sick. All the hours he'd spent with his fingers dancing across black and white keys, creating worlds with nothing but sound and feeling. Raj hadn't touched a piano in nearly a year. The small keyboard he kept in his bedroom gathered dust, a painful reminder of dreams deferred. He looked at Lillian Montgomery's smug smile, at her companion's barely concealed amusement. They were enjoying this little moment of theater, this opportunity to toy with someone they considered beneath their notice. They expected him to stammer an excuse, to shrink away in embarrassment. The hotel manager appeared from his office, alerted by the unusual quiet in the lobby. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. Before anyone could answer, Raj made his decision. He stepped out from behind the desk, smoothed down his jacket, and walked toward the piano without a word. The whispers started immediately, following him across the marble floor. He heard May's sharp intake of breath, felt the weight of stares from every corner of the lobby. Lillian Montgomery's group had turned to watch him, surprise replacing their earlier amusement. The piano bench was cool beneath him as he sat down. Raj took a deep breath, flexing his fingers. The white keys gleamed up at him, familiar yet strange after so long away. He placed his hands in position, closed his eyes for just a moment, and began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major filled the lobby, soft and hesitant like the first drops of rain before a storm. Raj felt rusty, his fingers not quite as nimble as they once had been, but the muscle memory remained. As he continued to play, something shifted inside him. The music flowed more freely, his body remembering what his conscious mind had forgotten. He didn't look up, didn't want to see the faces watching him. Instead, he lost himself in the piece, letting the melody carry him away from the hotel, away from unpaid bills and hospital visits and late-night worries. For the first time in months, he felt like himself again. The nocturne built gradually, growing in complexity and emotion. Raj's fingers moved faster, more confidently, drawing out the haunting beauty of Chopin's composition. When he reached the climax, his hands flying across the keys in a flurry of notes that seemed almost impossible to produce, he finally allowed himself to glance up. The lobby had fallen completely silent. Guests and staff alike stood motionless, many with phones raised to record the unexpected performance. Near the front desk, the hotel manager's mouth hung slightly open in shock. And there, standing closer to the piano than before, was Lillian Montgomery. The smug smile had vanished from her face, replaced by an expression Raj couldn't quite read. Surprise, certainly, but something else too. Something that looked almost like respect. As the final notes of the nocturne faded into silence, Raj's hands came to rest in his lap. For one breathless moment, no one moved or spoke. Then the lobby erupted in applause. The applause washed over Raj like a warm wave. For a moment, he sat frozen at the piano, hardly believing what had just happened. Then reality came rushing back. He was still at work. He had just left the front desk without permission. The hotel manager was staring at him with an unreadable expression. Raj stood up quickly, gave a small awkward bow, and started to make his way back to his post. Guests reached out as he passed, patting his shoulder, murmuring compliments. An older woman grabbed his hand and told him he reminded her of Vladimir Horowitz. Raj smiled politely, thanked them, but kept moving, his heart pounding against his ribs. Lillian Montgomery hadn't moved. She stood near the piano, her entourage hovering uncertainly behind her. The amused smirk was gone from her face, replaced by something that looked almost like wonder. As Raj approached, she stepped into his path, forcing him to stop. "Where did you learn to play like that?" she asked, her voice quieter now, the earlier challenge gone from her tone. Raj swallowed. "My grandmother taught piano lessons when I was growing up. She started me when I was 4. And now you work at a hotel reception desk?" There was genuine curiosity in her question, not the judgment he expected. Before he could answer, the hotel manager appeared at his side, smiling tightly. "Ms. Montgomery, I hope you enjoyed our little impromptu entertainment. Raj, a word, please." "Of course, Mr. Powell." Raj nodded politely to Lillian and followed his manager toward the office, his stomach sinking. He was about to be fired. 3 months into the job, and he'd blown it by accepting a ridiculous dare from a bored millionaire. "Wait." Lillian's voice cut through the lobby like a knife. Everyone froze, including Mr. Powell. "I'm not finished speaking with him." The manager turned, his professional smile firmly back in place. "Perhaps after his shift, Ms. Montgomery. We're quite busy with check-ins for the gala, and I don't think you understand." She walked toward them, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. "I just publicly promised to go on a date with one of your employees. I intend to follow through." She pulled a small card from her clutch and held it out to Raj. "Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. I'll send a car." Raj took the card automatically, too stunned to speak. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock with just her name and a phone number printed in elegant black script. On the back, she'd hastily written another number in blue ink. "That's my private line," she said, nodding at the handwritten digits. "Text me where you'd like to go." With that, she turned and walked toward the elevators, her entourage scrambling to keep up. The blonde woman glanced back, giving Raj a look that mingled surprise with something that might have been respect. Then they were gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of expensive perfume and a lobby full of whispers. Mr. Powell cleared his throat. "My office now." The manager's office was small but elegantly furnished, with dark wood paneling and a window overlooking the hotel's courtyard garden. Raj stood in front of the desk, hands clasped behind his back, waiting for the inevitable. "How long have you been playing piano?" Mr. Powell asked, surprising him. "Since I was 4, sir." "About 20 years. And you didn't think to mention this when you applied here?" The manager leaned back in his chair, studying Raj with new interest. "We've been hiring outside pianists for our Sunday brunches and holiday events." Raj shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't think it was relevant to the front desk position, sir." Mr. Powell tapped his fingers on the desk. "Well, it's certainly relevant now. That performance you just gave is all over social media already." He turned his computer monitor around, showing Raj a Twitter feed full of video clips. "The Regent is trending." Raj stared at the screen in disbelief. Someone had posted a video with the caption, "Hotel receptionist slays Chopin after Millionaire challenges him to play." It already had thousands of likes and shares. "I'm sorry, sir. I know I should have asked permission before leaving my post." "It won't happen again." "No, it certainly won't." Mr. Powell's stern expression suddenly broke into a smile. "Because next time it will be scheduled. How would you feel about adding weekend pianists to your duties? We'll adjust your hours at the front desk and add a significant bump to your pay." Raj blinked, certain he'd misheard. "You're not firing me?" The manager laughed. "Fire you? You just gave this hotel the kind of publicity money can't buy. Do you have any idea how many people are going to come to the Regent now, hoping to see the front desk pianist perform?" He shook his head. "No, Raj, I'm not firing you. I'm promoting you. That is, if you're interested." "Yes, sir." "Very interested." Raj's mind raced with the implications. "Better pay. Flexible hours. A chance to play again. Good. We'll work out the details tomorrow. For now, you'd better get back to the desk. Mai looks like she's about to have a nervous breakdown." Mr. Powell stood, indicating the meeting was over. "And Raj, that date with Ms. Montgomery tomorrow night. I'd suggest you don't stand her up. She's not known for taking rejection well." When Raj returned to the front desk, the lobby was still buzzing with excited conversation. Guests pointed at him, whispered behind their hands. May's eyes were as wide as saucers. What happened? She demanded in a low voice as he took his place beside her. Are you fired? No, Raj said, still processing it himself. Actually, I think I just got promoted. You're kidding. May stared at him. What about, you know? She nodded toward the elevators where Lillian Montgomery had disappeared. Raj felt the weight of the business card in his pocket. I guess I have a date tomorrow night. The rest of his shift passed in a blur. Word of what had happened spread quickly among the staff. Bellhops and housekeepers found excuses to pass by the front desk, shooting him curious glances. By the time Raj clocked out at 11, he was exhausted from the attention. Outside, the night air felt cool against his face. He loosened his tie as he walked to the bus stop, finally allowing himself to think about what had just happened. He'd played piano again. Really played, not just picking out simple tunes on his dusty keyboard at home. And people had liked it. More than liked it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from his friend Dev with a link to a YouTube video. Dude, you're famous. Raj clicked the link. There he was, sitting at the grand piano in the Regent's lobby, lost in Chopin. The video already had over 50,000 views. The comment section was filled with praise, questions about who he was, and wild speculation about his date with the famous Lillian Montgomery. Speaking of which, he pulled out her business card, running his thumb over the embossed letters of her name. Should he actually text her? Maybe the whole thing had been a joke. A moment of whimsy from a woman known for her eccentricity. She probably hadn't expected him to actually play, let alone play well. Now that the surprise had worn off, she'd likely forgotten all about him. His phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I'm still waiting to hear where we're having dinner tomorrow night. Don't tell me you're standing me up already? Raj stared at the message. It had to be her. But how did she get his number? As if reading his mind, a second text appeared. Your manager was very helpful when I called the front desk. Hope you don't mind. Raj's bus pulled up, its doors opening with a hydraulic sigh. He let it go without him, too distracted to board. What was he supposed to say to Lillian Montgomery? Where could he possibly take her that wouldn't seem pathetic compared to the fancy restaurants she must be used to? Another text came through. If you're overthinking this, stop. Just pick somewhere with good food and no photographers. I've had enough cameras for one day. Raj took a deep breath and typed his response. There's a small Vietnamese place near my apartment. Best pho in the city. Nothing fancy, but the food is amazing. The reply came almost immediately. Perfect. Text me the address. Car will pick you up at 8. Raj's mind raced as he finally boarded the next bus. 24 hours ago, his life had been simple. Work, home, worry about bills, repeat. Now he was trending on social media, had a new position at the hotel, and was about to have dinner with one of the richest women in the city. As the bus lumbered through nighttime streets, Raj leaned his head against the window and wondered what his grandmother would say when he told her. She'd always believed his music would open doors for him someday. She just probably never imagined it would happen quite like this. Raj's tiny apartment felt even smaller than usual as he stood in front of the bathroom mirror, trying to decide if his outfit looked decent enough. He'd settled on his only good dress shirt, dark blue, thankfully without wrinkles, and black slacks. No tie. The Vietnamese restaurant was casual, and he'd feel ridiculous showing up overdressed. You look handsome, his grandmother said from the doorway. She leaned on her walker, smiling at his reflection. Her face was thinner than it had been a year ago, but her eyes were still bright with the same fierce intelligence that had guided him his whole life. Are you sure this is okay? Raj tugged at his collar. Maybe I should wear a tie. For pho? She chuckled. You'll look like you're trying too hard. She moved slowly to the couch and eased herself down. Tell me again about this woman. Raj checked his phone. 20 minutes until the car was supposed to arrive. Her name is Lillian Montgomery. She owns that big tech company WorldSpeak, the translation app everyone uses. And she asked you out because you played piano? His grandmother raised an eyebrow. Just like that? Well, she dared me to play and said she'd go out with me if I did. Raj sat beside her, suddenly feeling foolish. I think she was just trying to embarrass me. She didn't expect me to actually play or to be any good. His grandmother patted his knee. Her mistake, she paused. You know you don't have to go. This sounds like some rich person's game. I know. Raj had been thinking the same thing all day. But Mr. Powell, my boss, thinks it would be good for the hotel. And honestly, I'm curious. Just be careful. His grandmother's voice grew serious. People like that, they live in a different world. Don't let her make you feel small. Raj nodded, though a knot of anxiety had formed in his stomach. What was he thinking? He was about to have dinner with a woman worth billions who probably ate at five-star restaurants every night. What would they even talk about? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Car is downstairs. That's her. Raj stood, suddenly wanting to call the whole thing off. His grandmother reached for his hand. Remember who you are, she said softly. You're the boy who won the state championship 3 years in a row. The one who got offered a full scholarship to the conservatory. Her eyes shone with pride. You could have been anything, done anything. I chose to be here with you, Raj said, squeezing her hand. And I've never regretted it. She smiled, but he could see the guilt in her eyes. They'd had this conversation many times. Go, she said. Have a good time. I want to hear everything when you get back. The car waiting outside was black and sleek with tinted windows and a driver in a suit who opened the door for him without a word. Raj slid into the back seat, half expecting to find Lillian already inside. But he was alone. As they pulled away from his run-down apartment building, Raj felt like he was in a movie, the kind where someone from the wrong side of the tracks gets a glimpse of how the other half lives. The drive took about 20 minutes through neighborhoods that grew progressively nicer until they reached the Vietnamese restaurant he'd suggested. Pho Nguyen was a small place, family-owned with bright fluorescent lighting and plastic tables. Nothing fancy, just amazing food and prices that wouldn't destroy his budget. Raj loved it, but as the driver opened his door, he wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. Lillian Montgomery probably expected something with white tablecloths and wine lists. Too late now. He took a deep breath and walked inside. The restaurant was about half full, mostly regulars slurping noodles and chatting. And there, sitting in a corner booth, was Lillian Montgomery. She wore jeans and a simple gray sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Without the designer dress and diamonds, she looked almost normal. She was scrolling through her phone, a glass of water untouched beside her. When she glanced up and saw him, her face broke into a smile that transformed her completely. Gone was the sharp-edged businesswoman from the hotel lobby. She looked younger, softer somehow. You came, she said as he approached. I wasn't sure you would. Raj slid into the booth across from her. I said I would. He looked around nervously. I hope this place is okay. I know it's not what you're probably used to. It's perfect. Lillian put her phone away, giving him her full attention. I Googled it. 4.8 stars on review sites. The owner escaped Vietnam during the war and brought his family recipes with him. Been in business 22 years. Raj blinked, surprised she'd bothered to research the place. You did your homework. I always do. She picked up the laminated menu. What's good here? Everything, but especially the po with beef brisket and the spring rolls. An older Vietnamese woman approached their table, smiling warmly at Raj. Hello, young man. You bring date tonight? Raj felt his face grow warm. Mrs. Nguyen, this is my friend Lillian. Very pretty friend, Mrs. Nguyen said with a wink. What you want tonight? They ordered. Raj's usual po and spring rolls plus a plate of dumplings Lillian wanted to try. As Mrs. Nguyen bustled away, an awkward silence fell between them. So, Raj said finally, this is weird, right? The whole situation? Lillian laughed, a genuine sound that made her seem even more human. Definitely weird. I'm sorry about yesterday. I was being a jerk. She traced a pattern on the plastic tablecloth with her fingertip. I do that sometimes when I'm uncomfortable. You were uncomfortable? At the hotel? Raj found that hard to believe. I hate those charity events. Everyone wanting something from me, treating me like I'm made of money. She shrugged, which I guess is kind of true. But still. So you decided to dare a random hotel employee to play piano? I saw your hands, she said, glancing at his fingers resting on the table. My dad was a concert pianist. I grew up watching him play, seeing how his hands moved. You have the same kind of hands. She looked up, meeting his eyes. I wanted to know if you could play. I didn't expect. What happened? And what exactly was that? Raj asked, genuinely curious. From your perspective? Lillian seemed to consider her words carefully. It was like watching someone transform. 1 minute you were this nervous hotel clerk, and the next, She gestured vaguely. You were something else entirely. It was beautiful. Mrs. Nguyen returned with their spring rolls and dumplings, giving them a moment to collect themselves. Raj was grateful for the interruption. No one had ever described his playing that way before, and he wasn't sure how to respond. So why the hotel job? Lillian asked after they'd started eating. Why aren't you performing somewhere? The question was direct, but her tone was curious rather than judgmental. Raj considered deflecting, giving a simple answer, but something about the genuine interest in her eyes made him tell the truth. My grandmother raised me after my parents died. She's the one who taught me to play. He dipped a spring roll in sauce. About 1.5 years ago, she got sick. Heart problems. She needs expensive treatments and our insurance doesn't cover much. He shrugged. I had a scholarship to the conservatory, but I deferred it to take care of her. The hotel job pays better than most places would hire me for. Lillian listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. That's why you don't have a piano at home? I noticed your hands. They're in good shape, but not like someone who practices daily. I have a keyboard, but it's not the same. And I don't have much time these days between work and taking care of Gran. Raj hadn't meant to share so much, but once he started, the words just flowed. Yesterday was the first time I'd played a real piano in almost 1 year. And yet you played like that. Lillian shook her head, looking impressed. Do you know you're all over the internet? People are calling you Piano Man, Raj groaned. My friend sent me some of the videos. It's embarrassing. It's amazing, she corrected. You have a real gift, Raj. Their foe arrived, steaming bowls of fragrant broth filled with noodles and tender meat. For a few minutes they focused on their food, the conversation pausing as they enjoyed the rich flavors. This is incredible, Lillian said finally, looking up from her nearly empty bowl. You were right. Best in the city, Raj agreed. I found this place about 6 months ago. My grandmother loves their takeout on days when she feels good enough to eat a full meal. Something shifted in Lillian's expression. She set down her spoon and leaned forward slightly. Listen, Raj, I have doctors, good ones, specialists. I could have them take a look at your grandmother's case. See if there's a treatment option you haven't considered. Raj tensed. Here it was, the rich person swooping in to save the day. His pride rebelled against the idea, even as another part of him recognized it would be foolish to refuse help that could save his grandmother's life. That's very generous, he said carefully, but we've already seen specialists. The treatments are just expensive. I understand. Lillian seemed to sense his discomfort. It was just a thought. No pressure. She returned to her foe, letting the subject drop. As they finished their meal, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Lillian told him about growing up with a musician father, about her early days coding in her college dorm room, about the unexpected success of her translation app. Raj found himself relaxing, surprised by how easy she was to talk to when she wasn't putting on her public persona. By the time they finished their tea, 3 hours had passed, feeling like minutes. Outside, the same black car waited at the curb. Can I give you a ride home? Lillian asked as Raj insisted on paying for dinner, waving away her protests. Sure, he said, surprising himself. He wasn't quite ready for the evening to end. In the back seat of the car, sitting closer than necessary, Lillian turned to him. I had a really nice time tonight. Me too, Raj admitted. And he meant it. Maybe we could do it again sometime, she asked, suddenly sounding unsure, almost vulnerable. Raj looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the wealth and the power to the person beneath. Someone interesting, complicated, and unexpectedly genuine. I'd like that, he said softly. As the car glided through nighttime streets toward his apartment, Raj thought about how differently this day had turned out than he'd expected. Sometimes, he realized, the most surprising turns in life led to the most interesting destinations. 2 weeks passed in a blur of changes. Raj's life had shifted in ways he never could have predicted. At the Regent, he now split his time between the front desk and the grand piano in the lobby. 3 nights a week plus Sunday brunch, he played for hotel guests, everything from classical pieces to modern songs, whatever struck his mood or was requested. His hands remembered more than he'd thought possible, muscle memory taking over where practice had been lacking. The videos of his original performance had gone viral. Hotel bookings were up, with guests specifically requesting rooms on nights when Raj was scheduled to play. Mr. Powell couldn't have been happier. and Raj's new salary reflected that enthusiasm. But the biggest change wasn't at work. It was in the quiet moments between shifts, when his phone would buzz with a message from Lillian. What had started as a bizarre dare had somehow turned into something real. They'd had dinner 4 more times, each meeting longer than the last, conversations flowing more easily with every hour they spent together. On Friday afternoon, Raj arrived home to find his grandmother watching a cooking show, looking better than she had in weeks. The color had returned to her cheeks and she sat up straighter in her favorite chair. "How was your appointment?" he asked, setting down his bag and joining her on the couch. "Dr. Chen says I'm responding well to the new medication." She smiled, patting his hand. "My heart rhythm is more stable." He seemed very pleased. Raj felt a wave of relief wash over him. When Dr. Chen had called last week, suggesting a new treatment option that had just been approved for cases like his grandmother's, Raj had been cautiously optimistic. The doctor had even helped arrange coverage through a special program, making the expensive medication affordable. What Dr. Chen didn't know, what Raj had only begun to suspect, was that this sudden stroke of medical good fortune might not be entirely coincidental. He hadn't asked Lillian directly. Pride kept the question locked in his throat. But he'd seen the way she listened when he talked about his grandmother, the thoughtful look in her eyes when he mentioned the financial struggles of her care. His phone buzzed. "Speaking of Lillian, tonight, 7 p.m., I have something I want to show you." Before he could reply, another message appeared. "And don't say you have to work. I already checked with Mr. Powell. You're free." Raj shook his head, smiling. "Lillian wants to meet up tonight," he told his grandmother. "Go," she said immediately. "I'm feeling good today. Pia from next door is coming over for our show anyway." She nodded at the TV where her favorite cooking competition was playing. "We'll be fine." Raj hesitated, studying her face for any sign that she was just being selfless. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." She gave him a knowing look. "You like this girl?" It wasn't a question, but Raj answered anyway. "Yes, I do." It felt strange to admit it out loud, this growing feeling for someone who lived in such a different world from his own. But it's complicated. "Life is complicated," his grandmother said with the simple wisdom that had guided him since childhood. "Hearts usually aren't." At exactly 7 p.m., the now familiar black car pulled up outside their apartment building. But when Raj opened the back door, Lillian herself was inside rather than sending the car empty as she usually did. "Hi," she said, looking nervous for some reason. She wore jeans again, with a simple blue sweater that made her eyes look more vivid than usual. "Thanks for coming on such short notice." "Of course." Raj slid in beside her, catching the subtle scent of her perfume. "Where are we going?" "It's a surprise," she smiled mysteriously. "How's your grandmother doing?" "Better, actually. The new medication seems to be helping." Raj watched her face carefully as he added, "It's strange. Suddenly there's a special program covering the cost, and Dr. Chen says she's an ideal candidate for this new treatment option." Lillian's expression gave nothing away. "That's wonderful news," she said, meeting his eyes without flinching. "I'm really happy for you both." Raj decided to let it go for now. If Lillian had pulled strings to help his grandmother, confronting her about it wouldn't change anything. And the truth was, he was grateful, even if his pride made the feeling complicated. The car drove them out of the city, heading north along roads that grew increasingly scenic. After about 40 minutes, they turned onto a private drive that wound through trees before opening onto a stunning view of the coastline. A modern house perched on the cliff edge, all glass and sleek lines, with the ocean spreading out beyond it like a painting. "Is this your place?" Raj asked, impressed despite himself. "One of them," Lillian admitted as the car stopped in front of the house. "I come here when I need to think, away from the office." Inside, the house was surprisingly comfortable despite its architectural sophistication. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the ocean view, and minimalist furniture in warm tones made the space feel inviting rather than sterile. "This is beautiful," Raj said, drawn immediately to the wall of windows and the sunset view beyond. "Thanks." Lillian seemed oddly nervous, fidgeting with her hands. "There's something in the other room I want to show you. That's actually why I asked you here." Curious, Raj followed her through an archway into what appeared to be a music room, and there, in the center, stood a magnificent grand piano, a Steinway polished to a high shine, its lid propped open to reveal the complex machinery inside. "This was my father's," Lillian said quietly. "After he died, I couldn't bear to part with it, but I don't play. It's just been sitting here for years." She ran her hand along its edge almost reverently. "I had it tuned yesterday." Raj approached the piano slowly, almost afraid to touch it. It was the kind of instrument he'd only dreamed of playing, the kind professionals performed on in concert halls. "May I?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lillian nodded, stepping back to give him space. Raj sat at the bench, positioned his hands, and played a single chord. The sound resonated through the room with perfect clarity, each note distinct yet blending into a harmonious whole. He closed his eyes, playing a few more exploratory notes, getting a feel for the touch and response of the keys. It was like driving a high-performance car after years of economy models, so responsive it almost seemed to anticipate his intentions. Without conscious thought, he began to play, not Chopin this time, but Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece that matched the tranquil ocean view and the soft evening light. The music flowed from his fingers as if he'd been practicing daily for years, not struggling to find time for even basic scales. He lost himself in the piece, forgetting Lillian was there, forgetting everything except the connection between his hands and the keyboard, the way each phrase led naturally to the next. When the final notes faded away, he opened his eyes to find Lillian watching him with an expression of wonder. "I've never heard it played like that," she said softly. "Not even by my father." Coming from her, it was the highest compliment possible. Raj felt something catch in his throat. "This piano is incredible," he said, running his hands reverently over the keys. "I've never played anything like it." Lillian took a deep breath as if gathering her courage. "I want you to have it." Raj looked up sharply. "What?" "The piano. I want you to have it." She sat beside him on the bench, not quite touching, but close enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence. "It needs someone who can do it justice." "It's been silent too long." Raj stared at her, speechless. A piano like this was worth more than he'd earn in years, even with his new position at the hotel. "I can't accept that," he said finally. "It's too much. It was your father's, and he would hate knowing it's just gathering dust." Lillian looked directly into his eyes. "Raj, you have an extraordinary gift. My father always said true talent needs the right instrument to fully express itself. But where would I even put it? My apartment is tiny. My grandmother and I barely have room to move around as it is." Lillian bit her lip, clearly having anticipated this objection. "I've been thinking about that. There's another option." She stood up, pacing a little as she spoke. "I own a small house in the city. It's not far from the Regent, actually. 3 bedrooms, a nice yard. It's been sitting empty since I bought the building it's in. You and your grandmother could live there. The piano would fit perfectly in the living room." Raj felt like the room was spinning. This was too much, way too much. "Lillian, I can't let you do that. A house, a piano like this? People would think. They'd assume. I don't care what people think." She sat back down, taking his hands in hers. "Look, I know how this sounds, but you need to understand something." She took a deep breath. "That night at the hotel when you played, it was the first time in years I felt anything real. Since my father died, music has just been painful, but you changed that." Her voice grew softer, "and every time we've been together since then, I felt more like myself. Not the CEO, not the rich tech founder everyone wants something from. Just me." Raj looked down at their joined hands, his pianist's fingers intertwined with her smaller ones. "This isn't charity," she continued when he didn't speak. "It's selfish, actually. I want to hear you play. I want to see what happens when someone with your talent has the right tools, the right opportunities." She squeezed his hands gently. "Just think about it, okay? No pressure, no deadline. The piano and the house aren't going anywhere." Outside, the sun had set completely, leaving the room lit only by subtle, recessed lighting. The ocean was a dark expanse beyond the windows, mysterious and vast. Raj turned back to the piano and played a simple, quiet melody, just a few notes that seemed to hang in the air between them. "I'll think about it," he said finally. Lillian smiled, the tension leaving her shoulders. "That's all I'm asking." As the melody continued, soft and contemplative, Raj wondered what his grandmother would say about all this. About the piano, the house, and the woman offering them, whose complicated life had somehow become entangled with his own. 3 months later, Raj stood backstage at the Regent's Grand Ballroom, adjusting his bow tie and trying to calm his racing heart. The hotel had been transformed for tonight's charity gala, the same event that had brought Lillian Montgomery into his life that fateful evening. Only this time Raj wasn't working the front desk. He was the featured performer. 5 minutes, Mr. Chen, a staff member said, poking her head through the curtain. Mr. Chen. He was still getting used to being addressed so formally by people who had been his co-workers just a few months ago. So much had changed. Sometimes he hardly recognized his own life. After weeks of consideration and long talks with his grandmother, Raj had accepted Lillian's offer of the house not as a gift, but as a rental with the option to buy it from her someday. His pride had demanded that much, and Lillian had understood without him having to explain. The house was perfect. A charming 3-bedroom with large windows that filled the rooms with light and enough space for his grandmother to move around easily. The neighborhood was quiet, with a small park nearby where she could sit on good days watching children play while getting fresh air that had been impossible in their old apartment. As for the piano, that had been a different story. Raj had been unable to resist the Steinway. It now stood in the living room of their new home, the focal point of the entire house. His grandmother often sat beside him while he practiced, her eyes closed, a peaceful smile on her face as the music washed over her. Dr. Chen, no relation, though Raj's grandmother jokingly called him cousin, continued to be amazed by her progress. The experimental treatment program was working better than anyone had expected. She still had bad days, but they were fewer now, outnumbered by good ones where she cooked traditional meals and tended the small garden she'd started in the backyard. Raj never directly asked Lillian about her involvement in his grandmother's medical care, and she never volunteered the information. Some things didn't need to be said aloud to be understood. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Speak of the devil. Lillian stood in the doorway, stunning in a simple black dress, her hair swept up elegantly. Hey, she said softly. Nervous? Terrified, Raj admitted with a small laugh. There are over 300 people out there, all of whom already love you. She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. The video of your performance from 3 months ago has over 10 million views now. Did you know that? People are calling you the Regent pianist online. Raj shook his head. The internet fame still felt unreal to him, disconnected from his actual life and the hours he spent practicing, playing at the hotel, and taking care of his grandmother. What if I mess up? Then you'll recover and keep playing, Lillian said simply. That's what my father always said. No performance is perfect, it's how you handle the imperfections that makes you an artist. She reached out, straightening his already straight tie, her fingers lingering just a moment longer than necessary. Their relationship had evolved slowly, cautiously, neither of them wanting to rush what was building between them. They'd been careful to keep things private, away from the public eye and the gossip columns that would have a field day with the tech billionaire and the hotel pianist. I have something for you, she said, reaching into her small clutch and pulling out an envelope. I was going to wait until after the performance, but I think you might need this now. Curious, Raj opened the envelope and pulled out an official-looking letter. As he read the first few lines, his breath caught. Is this real? He whispered, looking up at her with wide eyes. Very real, Lillian confirmed, her face breaking into a proud smile. The director is an old friend of my father's, but the invitation is based entirely on your talent. He watched your videos and called me immediately. The letter was from the San Francisco Symphony, inviting Raj to audition for a special performance series featuring emerging pianists. It was the kind of opportunity most musicians only dreamed about. I don't know what to say, Raj stammered, reading the letter again to make sure he hadn't misunderstood. Say you'll audition, Lillian suggested. Say you'll take a chance on the life you were meant to have before fate intervened. My grandmother. We'll be fine, Lillian finished for him. The audition is just for 1 day, and if you're selected, we'll figure out the rest. Together. She took his hands, the letter pressed between their palms. You've put everyone else first for so long, Raj. Maybe it's time to let yourself reach for something too. Before he could respond, another knock came at the door. It's time, Mr. Chen, the event coordinator said. Everyone's waiting. Raj carefully folded the letter and slipped it into his jacket pocket next to his heart. Thank you, he said to Lillian, the words encompassing so much more than just the letter. For everything. She smiled, a soft, private smile he'd come to treasure. Go show them what music is supposed to sound like. As Lillian slipped out to take her seat in the audience, Raj took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The ballroom was packed with the city's elite, many of whom had specifically come to hear him play. In the front row, his grandmother sat in a new dress, looking healthier than she had in years, her eyes shining with pride. The grand piano waited for him, lid open, keys gleaming under the spotlights. Not the Steinway from Lillian's beach house, but a beautiful instrument nonetheless. Raj sat down, adjusted his position, and looked out at the sea of faces watching him expectantly. 3 months ago, he'd been invisible to these people, just another hotel employee to be overlooked or ordered around. Now they sat in perfect silence, waiting for him to create something beautiful. Life could change so quickly, spinning on the smallest moments of chance or courage. Raj began to play. Not Chopin or Debussy this time, but an original composition he'd been working on for weeks. It started softly, tentatively, like a question being asked. The melody built slowly, gaining confidence, weaving in themes that reflected his journey, the struggle, the unexpected joy, the possibilities opening before him. As his fingers danced across the keys, Raj felt something he hadn't experienced since he was a child first discovering music, pure, uncomplicated happiness. The kind that exists in the moment, without worry about the past or future. His grandmother had always told him that music was his gift to the world. Tonight it felt like the world was giving something back. The piece reached its climax. Bold and certain now, before resolving into a gentle coda that echoed the opening theme, but with subtle differences that suggested growth, change, hope. As the final notes hung in the air, Raj closed his eyes, savoring the moment of perfect silence that followed. Then the applause began, thunderous, immediate, filling the ballroom with sound. Raj stood and bowed, his eyes finding his grandmother in the front row. She was crying, but they were tears of joy. Beside her, Lillian was on her feet, applauding with undisguised pride. Later that night, after the crowds had gone and the hotel staff were cleaning up, Raj found himself back at the piano. Most of the lights had been turned off, leaving the ballroom in shadow except for a single spotlight still illuminating the stage. He played quietly, simple melodies that required no thought, letting his mind wander over everything that had happened and what might come next. He heard soft footsteps approaching, but didn't look up. He knew who it was. Lillian sat beside him on the bench, not touching the keys, just listening. When he finished the melody, she spoke. "What are you thinking about?" "The future," Raj admitted. "The audition. What it might mean. Are you scared?" she asked. "Yes," he said honestly. "But not like before. It's a different kind of fear." "The good kind," Lillian nodded, understanding. "The kind that means you're about to do something important." "Exactly." Raj played a few more notes, then let his hands rest. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about taking a chance on the life I was meant to have. And I think..." He turned to look at her directly, this woman who had challenged him, supported him, and somehow seen exactly who he was from the very beginning. "I think sometimes life gives you a second chance at the dream you thought was lost. And sometimes it gives you a completely new dream you never even imagined." Lillian's eyes were soft in the dim light. "Which one is this?" Raj smiled. "Maybe both." He reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers. "Whatever happens with the audition, with everything else, I'm glad you dared me to play that night." "So am I," Lillian whispered. "More than you know." In the empty ballroom, with moonlight streaming through the high windows and the world quiet around them, Raj began to play again. A new melody this time, one that was still forming, still finding its way. Like their story, it wasn't finished yet. It was just beginning.